All right, welcome all to your video lecture on water quality. We're going to start today by investigating the different indicators of water quality. So these things tell us whether the water is good, poor, or fair, which is generally fair means pretty normal, pretty average. So hopefully you have navigated Canvas correctly, found the assignment, read my write-up. It says, wow, we've learned so much about water so far. Have you ever seen a lake or river that looks suspect? It might be a funny color or even smell weird. As scientists, we have identified certain conditions of water that we consider poor, fair, or good. Today we are going to learn about those conditions. Today your task is to complete the following set of notes. If you're in person, please complete the notes in your notebook using Ms. Backover's lecture. If you're online, please complete the water quality indicator PowerPoint right here. Here's some troubleshooting just in case you need some help. Again, if you're doing this online, make sure you have made a copy of these notes and change the share settings so that I'm able to view it. But here we go. So would you swim in this water? How about this water? This water? Or what about even this water? So what you've seen here are a couple of the different lakes around the area, the first being White Lake, Jones Lake, Singletary Lake, and I can't remember which lake this is. But these are different examples of water around here that you might see. Now it's really common to swim in White Lake, and it's okay, it's pretty common to swim in Jones Lake. But as far as Lake Singletary goes, not very many people swim in there. And I think this is Lake Waccamaw now that I remember. Even less people swim in Lake Waccamaw. Some people do, just depends. There's a lot of wildlife in there. But what does it take as far as water? What kind of qualities of water are you looking for when you think, do I want to swim in this water? You might look at the color, just like the write-up says. You might smell. Do you have that funny smell, like a dead fish smell? If so, maybe you don't swim in it. Does it have a bunch of algae? Do you see a lot of fish? All of these are some things you might ask yourself to determine whether or not the water is swimmable, or to determine the water quality. Now, as scientists, though, we get a little bit more specific. We want to know more about the water. We define water quality as the condition of the water. Again, it can be poor, moderate, aka fair, or good. How do we measure water quality? So we measure water quality. Let's see if we can present this the other way. I don't know. Okay. So we measure water quality using what we call water quality indicators. The definition of this and what you first write down is different chemicals or physical properties of water that are known to show a healthy water system. Again, I'm really sorry that some of those are cut off. I do not know how to fix that. Good. So we're looking at the different chemical or physical properties. We have two types, chemical and physical, and we're going to investigate each of those. So our first chemical water quality indicator is pH. This is a measure of how acidic or basic a substance is. That might do it. Let's try that. Still not that much better. Again, this is a measure. One more time. There we go. Measure of how acidic or basic a substance is. Healthy water is about 7.4 on the pH scale, just a little bit basic. Remember, 7 is our exactly neutral. Pure water will be a 7 pH. The more acidic the water is, generally the less healthy the water is. So you could say that a very acidic lake or body of water is not that healthy. It doesn't indicate or show good water quality. That's pH. Now if we go through pH again, let's look at our pH scale right here, just so you know what we're talking about. I can't remember if we talked about this in our class or Earth and Environmental, but our pH refers to how acidic the water is, how many hydrogens there are or are not in the water. A healthy river has a pH between 5.5 and 8. The goal, though, is that 7.4 range, or just about neutral. The more neutral, the better the water quality is. We've got some known pHs here of different substances. So number 1 is battery acid. It's really acidic. Gastric acid 2, hydrochloric acid 3, soda 4, like baking soda, soda like pop. Acid rain is 5, black coffee is 6, urine or saliva is about that 6 or 7 range, pure water is 7, seawater is about 8, baking soda is 9, milk of magnesium is 10, ammonium 11, soapy water 12, bleach 13, and drain cleaner at 14. So again, with that pH scale, or if you don't know, the further you get from neutral, the more dangerous or harmful the substance is. Generally, like drain cleaner, don't want it on your skin, definitely don't want to drink it, none of that battery acid, very harmful for your skin and humans. Our next, and if you can imagine, that's even more harmful for fish that are living in these different systems. So generally our organisms, we say they have a pH range or pH tolerance. That means that's asking or indicating what pH level that organism can live in. Some are really tolerant, meaning that they can live in a wide range. So say maybe they can live between a 5 and a 10 on the pH scale. So they could live a lot of places. But some organisms are really specific. Maybe they can only live in water that has a pH of about 7. Anything below or above, they would perish. And that's why we want to kind of know the pH of our water, because it really kind of determines what kind of life is in our water. Good. Our next indicator here is dissolved oxygen, DO. It measures how much oxygen is in the water. Anything below 3 milligrams per liter is considered threatened. So you can see right here we've got a little chart for you. So here's our parts per million ppm, which is different than milligrams per liter. But you can see that at about 6 to 7 parts per million of dissolved oxygen, it's good for spawning, which is fish reproduction, and growth. So that's really good. Anything above that's going to give us a nice abundant fish population. We've got lots of oxygen in the water. That means lots of organisms can breathe. Very good. Anything below 5 is very stressful, so we might see a drop off in fish population, less fish. And anything below 3 here is going to be too low for fish populations to live, so we won't have any fish in the system at all. So dissolved oxygen is how much oxygen is in the water. That matters because organisms, even though they are underwater, they're using that dissolved oxygen to do cellular respiration or breathing. So they're still, quote, breathing underwater using their gills. They're taking in that oxygen. If there's no oxygen in the system, they're going to perish. Same thing happens with plants who also do respiration as well as photosynthesis. They need that oxygen in order to produce the ATP for their cells. We've got a little video, but I will post this on Canvas for you to watch. Our next chemical water quality indicator is called phosphates. This is going to measure how much phosphorus is in the water. Too much can lead to too many plants or plant overgrowth. Whenever we have too many plants in a system, typically it's going to be algae, we're going to decrease our DO levels, our oxygen levels, dissolved oxygen in the water. And again, remember, low DO levels are indicative or show a poor or unhealthy water system. There's an example of our phosphate group. It could have more molecules, more elements on here, but this is what we're looking for. This is how we might test it. Generally, with most of our water samples, we collect some water, we put some chemicals in it, we see how it reacts, and then we compare the color of the reaction to a known chart here. So this would have a pH, or a phosphate level of about 0.5. And remember, this has to do with plants. Phosphate, and our next one, nitrates, are limiting factors for plants. So the more we have of these, the more plants will be able to grow, which generally seems like a good thing, but it's not always, because sometimes it can take all of the oxygen out of the system. Again, or not again, but nitrate, similar to phosphates, measures how much nitrogen is in the water. Again, too much can lead to overgrowth in plants. You see it's a similar thing right here. We collect water, we put some chemicals in it, we watch it change colors, and then we compare that color to a known color chart right here. Good. Salinity is our next chemical water quality indicator. This measures how much salt's in the water. Too much salt can cause freshwater organisms to die. Our example here is our ghost trees of Wilmington, North Carolina. If you've ever gone over the Elizabeth Holmes Bridge, the big bridge, or the little bridge in Wilmington to get to Wilmington, you notice this place called Eagle Island. Eagle Island is surrounded, or it looks like this. There are a bunch of dead trees. That happened because you can see them right here. So all of these are ghost trees right here. It happened because we used the Cape Fear River right here to try and irrigate. And then the Cape Fear River turned out to be too salty, so the plants weren't able to survive because there was too much salt in the water. And then the plants ended up dying because of that. So too much salt in the water for non-salt tolerant plants like these trees right here can actually kill them. And we know if our plants die in the system, then our animals are soon to follow. Good. Misconception about salt. Again, when we're talking salt water, we're not just talking about our NaCl. We are talking about all kinds of different salts. So do not think that it's just your table salt that's in the ocean water. There's many different kinds of salts. Not something I would test you on, but something I hope you can correct in your mind. Again, NaCl is not the only kind of salt. The sodium chloride, not our only kind of salt. We have many other types of salt, and there are many other types of salt in the ocean as well. Turbidity is our first of our physical water quality indicators. Turbidity measures how much sediment is suspended in the water. Generally, a sample with high turbidity has a lower water quality. This is because if you're looking at my jars right here, this one is going to allow for much more sunlight to penetrate down to our plants if our plants were right here. This one is going to block the sunlight. Furthermore, any suspended sediments in the water might disrupt the ecosystem as well. So turbidity, high turbidity, generally not very good. You want nice clear water. This is what you would generally, when you're looking at a water and you're deciding whether you want to swim in it, generally you're thinking about turbidity. Our next physical property of quality of water is temperature. And temperature measures how much kinetic energy is in the water. Species have a temperature range they can survive in. So if you're looking at this chart right here to your right-hand side, we've got a pumpkin seed fish, sunfish, which loves to swim in about 87 degree Fahrenheit water. Our largemouth bass bump down to 80. And then if we go down this way, we're getting to colder water species like our lake trout here, which likes to live in about 52 degrees Fahrenheit water. So if I took this lake trout and tried to put it in a 90 degree water right here with the pumpkin seed sunfish, it would not survive because it is not warm water tolerant. Similar, I couldn't take the sunfish and put it in a cold water, it would pass away as well. So our water temperature changes matter. Now we're not talking about like the general seasonal change, it's just an overall, and as the climate warms, we are warming up the ocean water, making fish that aren't as tolerant not as happy. Along with that, generally scientists will use a temperature probe to test the temperature or a thermometer that looks something like this. Generally, temperature, as far as temperature goes, cold water has a higher dissolved oxygen than warm water. Actually, cold water has a greater ability to dissolve gases and liquids. I'm going to post an experiment that's going to show why, so you can get kind of get a better hands-on look at that. But basically, the cold water allows for more capturing of different gas molecules, just has a higher solubility. And our last physical indicator, which you need to add to the top, is bioindicators. It's a measure of the living things that within the system. Better diversity usually leads to better water quality. That's the end of this lecture. I hope you enjoyed. Goodbye.